there, my name is Robin, and welcome to English Grammar Now. Today, you're joining us for the best, most interesting lesson because we're talking about superlatives. First, let's talk about what these are. Superlatives are a kind of adjective that helps us describe the most of something. So whatever kind of adjective we have, a superlative is the number one of that quality. This helps us to say things like, my brother is fast. The other boys in his class are not as fast as him. We can use a superlative adjective to make this much shorter by saying, my brother is the fastest in his class. Let's talk about how to make them. Now, you may recognize the pattern from the comparative adjectives lesson. The pattern is very similar, except that we're adding a slightly different ending or a different word in front of this adjective. So for short adjectives, which are adjectives with one syllable or two syllables but y at the end, we add the ending est. Some examples of these adjectives are tall, hot, funny, light, smart, old, and easy. If we have longer adjectives, then we'll add the word most in front of the adjective. Longer adjectives are two syllables without a y at the end, or three or more syllables. Here's some examples of these adjectives: pleasant, modern, beautiful, intelligent, and expensive. Now let's take a look at these two types in a little more detail. First, for the short adjectives, where we add est at the end. There's a few spelling rules we have to remember. First of all, if the adjective already ends with an e, we don't add a second e. We just add st at the end. Some examples of this are late, changing to latest, or nice, changing to nicest. For adjectives that have consonant, vowel, consonant at the end, in that exact order, we have to remember to double the last consonant. The adjective big follows this pattern. So when we make a superlative, it's spelled B-I-G-G-E-S-T. So remember that spelling tip. Also, the word hot follows this pattern when it becomes hottest. The last spelling tip is if there's a y at the end, we change it into I before we add the est ending. We see this with adjectives like happy becoming happiest and early becoming earliest. Let's practice with a few of these short adjectives. Here we have some examples of adjectives that are short and will take the est ending. You can fit them in to these sentences, but you have to first figure out what the spelling will look like and if any of our rules apply. Go ahead, give it a try. Here's how we could fit these adjectives into the sentences. For number one, this box is the heaviest one. Be careful when you lift it. Did you remember to change that y into an I? Number two, I bought the cheapest cookies. They were on sale. Number three, that's the shortest flight I could get. It's 2 hours long. Number four, do you know the nearest ATM? Number five, today is the hottest day so far this summer. Did you remember to put T twice in that adjective? And number six, that movie was the funniest one I've ever seen. I cried laughing. Great job. Now let's look at the longer adjectives, where we add the word most in front of the adjective. So for two-syllable adjectives that don't have y at the end, or for adjectives that are three syllables or more, we use most. Here's some examples. What's the most unusual thing you've seen? I saw this dog once that could ride a scooter. It was the most incredible thing ever. So the adjectives unusual and incredible are longer, so we use the word most to make the superlative form. Now, there are a few irregular adjectives where we can change them into a superlative using both of those methods. This is because people often use them both ways. Some examples of this are quiet becoming quietest or more quiet. Clever becomes cleverest or more clever. And simple becomes simplest or more simple. And some adjectives have irregular changes, so we just need to memorize these. Good becomes best. Bad becomes worst. And far becomes farthest. We also sometimes use the, which you may remember from our lesson on articles. We use the in front of a superlative adjective because it is unique. There's only one in that place. So here's an example. It'll be the best birthday you've ever had. We're comparing this birthday to all your other birthdays, and this one is number 1. However, if we are comparing one thing with itself, we don't use the. Here's what that might look like. If I said, Vancouver is coldest in January, I'm not talking about Vancouver and comparing it with other cities. I'm just comparing Vancouver with different times in Vancouver. So we don't use the in that sentence. But we could say, Vancouver is the warmest capital in Canada, which means that Vancouver is being compared with many other cities. So that's when we would use the with a superlative adjective. Here's an activity for you to practice both of these types of adjectives, the shorter ones, the longer ones, and also a few irregular ones, so be careful for those. In each of these sentences, we've given you an adjective to use in the blank already, but you have to figure out how do we change it into a superlative, and does it need the in front of it? Be sure to read carefully to figure out what the meaning of these sentences is. Go ahead, give it a try. Here's how we could finish these sentences by adding the superlative adjectives. Number 1, I'm the oldest grandchild in my family. For this one, we've added the because we're comparing me to all the other grandchildren in the family. Number 2, the students are always most excited in the first week of classes. In this case, we didn't use the because the students are being compared to themselves at other times. Number 3, that was the worst idea you've ever had. We're not doing that. Remember, worst is one of those irregular adjectives. We just need to memorize this one. Number 4, take the next left. It's the fastest way. Here's another example of using the because we're comparing one way to all the other possible ways, and this one is the fastest. Number 5, I'm most alert after my morning coffee. This is an example of comparing me with myself at other times, so we don't use the. Also, alert is a 2-syllable adjective without y at the end, so we don't use the ending est, we use the word most instead. Great job! Something we should be careful of when we use both comparatives and superlatives is that there are some adjectives that we don't use in these forms. It's because we're describing something that is already totally unique. A few examples of these might include words like dead, perfect, instant, or pregnant. It's not really possible to be more dead, or the most dead, deader, deadest. Either you are or you aren't. So we can't really turn these into comparatives or superlatives because they're already very much one thing. Usually, either something is or isn't these adjectives. Lastly, here's an announcement that uses a few superlative adjectives. See if you can spot them as we read. Now, for the most anticipated event, I will announce the prizes for our animal costume competition. Susan, you win for the most realistic costume. I like the real feathers. Lindsay, you win the prize for the most sparkly costume. Your unicorn is amazing. Jackie, you win the award for the most creative costume. I've never seen a jellyfish before. And last, Danny, you win the prize for the scariest costume. You did a great job. Here's where we have a few examples of superlatives. Most anticipated, most realistic, most sparkly, most creative, and scariest. So you can see how we use different methods to turn these adjectives into the most or the biggest of their kind. Thanks for practicing with me. I look forward to seeing you again next time. Goodbye!